What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT show. Last night, we were breaking down some documents in the Bryan Kohberger case. And as we were doing that, Gray Hughes dropped in a bombshell video. I highly recommend you go and watch the hour-long video. I'm going to be breaking it down more in depth, but he dropped the video of the camera from the 1112 King Road residence, the next door neighbor to the victim's house for Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, and Madison Mogen. And this video captured a lot of the movements of Bryan Kohberger in his white launcher in the early morning hours of November 13, 2022. There's a few things that I've noticed in this video, and I kind of wanted to break down in a short video for you guys. And then I'll do a live probably a little bit later on this week, kind of breaking everything else in this video. But without further ado, let's look into this video. And the first thing that I wanted you guys to notice is in the top left corner here. Well, first and foremost, this is from the 1112 King Road residence. It's facing the King Queen Road intersection. Behind this residence is the 1122 King Road residence. In front here, I believe that's like 119 King Road, but the house to the left of it, right in the top left corner, what I want you to guys notice is, and this is around, well, this is at 3:31 a.m. This is after Bryan Kohberger's first initial pass. What you're going to see back there, and the audio is manipulated. So I didn't manipulate it. It was manipulated by Gray. He was trying to just boost it from what I understand. It does kind of make me hear things that maybe perhaps are there, aren't there. But I do want to advise that the audio is manipulated, but the video is not. And so in the top left corner, you're going to see a light kind of shine across that house back there. All right. And then the vehicle comes around and it pulls out in front. Now, if we fast forward to 4:07, you're going to see the same movement again. Now, this is the time that Bryan Kohberger is parking back there. This is the last time that he's been there. Now, the relevance or the importance of this, in my opinion, is that this tells me that Bryan Kohberger didn't park in the far back area. He parked probably along the side of the house, because had he parked in the back far area, the light isn't going to look that way. It looks very similar. It looks almost exactly the same. I went back and I looked at some other pass-bys, and it looks fairly close to that as well. And so as the vehicle does pass by, and I'll rewind it a little bit so we can see, it does appear that it almost looks like somebody's walking in front of the light, but it's not the case. It's the vehicle. As the vehicle turns, it pans through some trees and it shows up in that manner. It looks almost like somebody was walking in front of him, but that's not the case. And like I said, as you can see, it's very similar to each other. So this is an indication to me that Bryan Kohberger parked along the side of the house, not necessarily behind there, up in a way. Now how far along on the side, not sure. I don't think he was way up against the street. I think he was still a little bit further back. Those footsteps in the snow are kind of an indication of that. And so some other things that I noticed, I wanted to kind of hear out for some noises, see if we hear a trunk, see if we hear a door close. I isolated a couple of instances where there's some noises that are heard. Again, the audio is manipulated, and so sometimes there could be something that's manipulated. It could be wind. It could be a number of things that sound like something else, but just be advised about that. So at 4:08 and 50 seconds, that's one of the first times you hear like a noise. Don't know what that is. Could be a bug. Could be a number of things. Don't know what it is. Now, I don't think Bryan Kohberger exited his vehicle right then and there and got inside the house. One of the things that I discussed last night was the timing that it took for Bryan Kohberger to have committed this crime. And in the reports for ISP, the very first document that we read was the timing reports, that the report of how long it took investigators to complete the motions that they believe that Bryan Kohberger had taken. And they stated that from the time that Bryan Kohberger entered the residence to the time that he left the residence could have been as early as or as quick as 1 minute and 30 seconds. And if they did it at a much slower rate, And doing it so in that manner, it was still only 2 minutes and 33 seconds. So he wasn't in there very long. Now, we do know a couple of things that occurred. We know that he most likely went into, and this is one of the things that was documented in the documents for the timing, was that he most likely walked into or opened the door for Kaylee Goncalves' bedroom and noticed that nobody was in there, then went to Maddie's room. We know that at 4:16. Now I know the PCA says 4:12, but we've gone through the documents. There's a document for the TikTok warrant for Xana Kernodle that indicated that she was on TikTok till 4:16 a.m. Now this document was the warrant came back April 2023, so after the PCA. So this would have been more accurate information versus what they had preliminarily off of the phone. So at 4:16, we know that she's interrupted from her TikTok. We know that Dylan says that she hears Xana going up the stairs with Murphy before running down the stairs with Murphy saying someone is here. At the time, she thought it was Kaylee, but obviously that wasn't the case. That it was most likely Xana that was going up the stairs and down the stairs with Murphy, and that occurred at about 4:16, at least at 4:16 a.m. Here we're going to hear some audio that starts at 4:17 a.m. And it makes more sense with the timing. That seems about right as far as if Xana was interrupted much sooner, like at 4:13, 4:12, the barking and the noises and the altercation are happening much earlier than 4:17. So what this is probably an indication of is that one, Bryan Kohberger probably took his time to get out of the vehicle and get prepared before going in. And by taking his time, I'm not saying like a sweet time. I'm talking about a few minutes to get prepared and get ready. According to the Linda Lane footage, when he pulls in at 4:05 and the lights are turned off after the DoorDasher has already delivered the food to Xana and she's turned off the lights to her bedroom, Bryan Kohberger pulls in or pulls into the parking area of Linda Lane, and he parks there for about 11 seconds before reversing and going out. I anticipate there was probably a moment of hesitation sitting outside of that residence for some time. I think he also got out and got prepared. I don't think he wore his whatever it is that he wore, whether it was a jumpsuit, whether it was overalls, whatever it was. I don't think he wore it in the vehicle. The vehicle would have a lot of his DNA in it, and so to limit that amount, he probably got dressed outside of the vehicle, outside of the house, and then made entry. So my guesstimation, and when we were talking about this last night before this audio and this video came out, is that Bryan Kohberger probably wasn't into that house until about 4:12, 4:13 a.m. And it's interesting because as we watch this, we're going to hear some noises here and there, but nothing really sounds anything crazy. It's not until about 4:13 a.m. when I believe we hear maybe the first bark from Murphy, and it's very muffled. So it's obviously different from what happens at 4:17, where it's a little bit louder. At 4:13, it's more muffled, and then you can hear a little bit more around 4:16, muffled, and then it gets louder as you can hear him go from inside of the house to outside of the house, and then it eventually gets very loud where he's near the camera, and then it changes, and we'll go through it. So let's just play it so you guys can hear it. This is another moment where there's like a weird noise right there, like a clicking noise. I'll back it up a little bit. Don't know what that is. So here's 4:12:45. And this is when we'll start to hear maybe another clicking noise, but then we're going to also hear some barking here in a little bit, possibly. See right there, and that was 4:13 in about 15 seconds. We can hear some sort of muffled noise. It's possibly a bark. Dylan had mentioned in certain documents that she thought she heard Kaylee upstairs at one point playing with Murphy, which is confusing because she hears Kaylee upstairs playing with Murphy, then she thinks Kaylee going up the stairs with Murphy, then down the stairs with Murphy, before yelling, as she frantically yells, she thinks somebody is here. So, obviously she was in and out of consciousness. It was early in the morning and she was under the influence of alcohol. And she herself said that she had drinking heavily. And so she probably was a little bit confused about the sounds that she was hearing, but it's very possible that she heard maybe Murphy did bark upstairs before going downstairs and alarming Xana. And that may have been around the 413, 414 range. I think it was still a little bit later than that, but very well possible, because at 413, if he's upstairs, and that would put him in that room for about 3 minutes, which is a very long time. It's a very long time in that room. The detectives indicated that the entire 4 homicides, from him moving from outside of that residence, inside, upstairs, down to Xana's room, and then back out, even at a slower pace, was less than that, at 2 minutes and 33 seconds. For 3 minutes just upstairs, that's a very long time. And it's a very long time for him to be in that room, and for Murphy to get downstairs and interrupt Xana. So I'm really thinking he's probably in there closer to 415, 414, somewhere around there. But let's listen to this. And like I said, the reason why I think he's changing, and he's probably building up some nerve to go in there. So you can kind of hear something there, just not sure what that is. 414 happens. Kind of sounds like barking. Now this is 416. Now this would have been around the time that they're coming downstairs. This is where you hear a bark. And I think that this is at 416 and like 50 seconds. I'm going to back it up a little bit. You hear a little bit of a muffled bark. I think that, as I've said multiple times, I think that there was a moment where Murphy, Xana, and Bryan Kohberger may have seen each other. And I think that the reason why I think that is because if Xana ran back to her room, Murphy didn't follow her. Murphy went outside. So something spooked them both, in my opinion. So I think that this is where that spookage or spooking happens, maybe a little bit later, because the noises, the thud, and everything else happened a little bit after 417. It's almost at the same time that Murphy gets outside. There's shortly after, there's a thud and stuff going on. But let's so you guys can listen to it. There's the bark. Another bark inside. This sounds like it's inside the house. Now that's a little bit more clear, but it does sound more distant compared to what we're going to hear in a minute. That sounds like voices. That's Murphy barking. You're hearing a little bit. His voice changes a little bit. His bark changes. I'll point it out. And then it sounds like he's going further away again. So I think this might be when Bryan Kohberger exits. But I'll tell you where. Right there. And maybe not. Maybe it sounded different when I was listening to it earlier. It did sound weird. See, it sounds like he's moving away from the camera, but still outside. And then you hear something there at 419. Let me back that up. I don't know if that's a trunk. I don't know if that's a what this could be. You can hear, it sounds like a door or trunk at 419, but he doesn't leave the area for another minute and 40 seconds. And so he must be moving at a high rate of speed. Dylan had reported in her documents that she had called out to Kaylee on 2 occasions. One was Obviously, probably during maybe the altercation. The other one was shortly afterwards, after she heard the whimpering and things. So it's most likely if Bryan Kohberger missed one, it would be the first one, and most likely if he heard one of the two, it would be the second one, because it was not during the course of the incident happening. So, during those moments, he's probably got some tunnel vision going on. At the end, it's less quiet. It's more quiet, less noise. She yells out something. She's calling the phones. The phones are there in the rooms. One was on the floor near Xana. So he must have heard and understood that somebody was aware that he was inside of the house and had to get out of their high rate of speed. In fact, here in a minute, at 4:20, I believe, just shortly before 4:20, we're going to see a light in the top right corner, right underneath the timestamp. Remember when Dateline said that it appeared that he almost hit somebody? It does appear that somebody's out there with a flashlight for a short period of time right before he takes off at a high rate of speed. But here at 4:19, we're going to hear a noise. I don't know if that's a trunk or something else, but it is an extended period of time longer than you would expect for him to have gotten dressed or gotten out of there, especially if he's moving with a purpose. She was right there. One more time. What I suspect happened was see up there by the timestamp, we're going to see a light. I think you can kind of see the light moving around now. Maybe not. I know there's a light that pops up there by the timestamp around this time. Yeah, it was. You see the lights disappear. Let me back up a little bit. You see that light in the reflection of the house up there by the timestamp? It's going to pop up, that light. Hold on. Right there. There's some movement, and then the light in the reflection from across the street. There's a reflection of the light in the window. It's right there, right below where it says 4:20. And right about now, he's going to turn around the corner. He's out of there fast. And you can just kind of hear his acceleration throughout the entire time. You can see him up here between the houses on Valencia Drive or Taylor Avenue, one of the two. And is out of there at a high rate of speed. It's just a few things that I noticed. Again, we could see the light out there on the back of the house. They're kind of an indication of where he may have parked during the murders. He wasn't too far off. There's some noises that indicate what time he went in, what time he came out, what time that the altercation may have started. It all kind of fits the 2.5 minute mark. That's what I'm thinking about the amount of time that he was in there. I don't think he was in there very long. I think he walked straight in there, walked straight into Kaylee's room, opened the door, didn't see anybody in there, went into Maddie's room and immediately started the attack on her and Kaylee. I think that he was only in there for as long as it took for Murphy to go from Kaylee's room down the stairs into Xana's room, alert Xana, and interrupt Xana from her TikTok. Xana go through the hallway, up the stairs, and at that point, probably with her, maybe listening to music and or also talking with Murphy barking. I think that's when it interrupted. Bryan Kohberger got interrupted. He's leaving the knife sheath, then chases her down. According to the documents, there was blood leading all the way from the staircase into Xana's bedroom. There was droplets in the hallway. And when I had Steve from True Crime Web, a former and retired CSI crime scene investigator, he mentioned that the droplets on the floor were indicative of force, like somebody shook or an arm moved. Obviously, it appeared that he may have tried to maybe stood across, maybe moved with a purpose from in there. Don't know, but he ended up chasing. But it sounds like, and based on the documents for the timing records, they indicated that they moved with somewhat of a purpose, probably because of the blood droplets were an indication of cast off from moving with a purpose. And then he goes into Xana's room where he's interrupted by Kaylee. I mean, by Dylan yelling out, for Kaylee and him getting out of there. So I don't think he was in there very, very long at all. Maybe the 2 minutes, 2.5 minute marking, and it kind of narrows down the time frame that he had in there. And so you let me know what you guys think. I'll be breaking it down more in depth, probably maybe on Thursday. And let me know what you guys think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. I'll see you guys next time. Again, shout out to Gray Hughes for dropping that piece of information. Thank you for that. Yeah, you guys have a great day. Peace.